It's the scandal no one predicted, but everyone is whispering about. Kirk Frost and Mendeecees Harris, two of the most notorious names in love and hip-hop history, have now been blacklisted. Yes, you heard that right. After years of drama, betrayals, and headline-grabbing chaos, their time in the spotlight has come to a shocking halt. No cameras, no confessionals, just silence. But the question is, why? What triggered such a drastic punishment? What really went down behind those closed doors that even producers couldn't ignore? Sources say it wasn't just an argument, and it wasn't playful shade. It was an explosive backstage clash, so heated, so out of control, that security couldn't contain it. Tempers flared, voices rose, and in the blink of an eye, fists were flying. The fallout? A career-ending move that nobody saw coming. For years, Kirk and Mendeecees were considered royalty in the love and hip-hop empire. But now they're out, done, erased from the very industry that made them household names. And yet the whispers keep growing. Was this truly about one fight, or was it about something darker, something producers don't want fans to know? Secret alliances, hidden betrayals, and revelations that could shatter everything. This scandal runs deeper than anyone imagined. And tonight we break it all down. Stay locked in, because if you thought you'd seen every twist in love and hip-hop, think again. The tension didn't appear overnight. It had been simmering quietly for weeks, waiting for the right spark to explode. At first, it was harmless shade, the kind of small digs that reality stars throw at each other for entertainment. But with Kirk Frost and Mendeecees Harris, those jabs carried weight. Both men were veterans of drama, each with reputations built on fiery tempers and sharp tongues. The stage was set long before fists were ever raised. Rumors started circulating that Mendeecees had been talking recklessly behind Kirk's back. He allegedly called him a washed-up has-been, someone clinging to relevance only because of Rashida's hustle. At first, Kirk tried to brush it off. He knew how love and hip-hop thrived on gossip, and he had weathered his fair share of shade before. Loose lips and backstage chatter were nothing new in the franchise. But this time, the whispers grew louder. Multiple cast members stepped forward claiming that Mendeecees had taken things much further than casual trash talk. The allegations escalated into full-blown accusations. Mendeecees was reportedly telling producers that Kirk was desperate for storylines and willing to manufacture fake beef just to stay relevant. To make matters worse, he painted Kirk as a liability, insisting that he brought nothing fresh to the show except recycled scandals and tired drama. For Kirk, those comments hit like a knife to the gut. It wasn't just professional criticism, it was personal. To him, it was about legacy, respect, and reputation. Kirk's frustration boiled over during private conversations with fellow cast members. He had the nerve to say, "I'm the one holding the show back?" Kirk reportedly vented, his tone sharp and bitter. This man barely got out of prison and now he thinks he's running things? That statement made it clear, this wasn't simply ego. For Kirk, it was an attack on everything he had built. Inside sources say Kirk finally decided he couldn't ignore it any longer. He pulled Mendeecees aside before the reunion taping, hoping to clear the air man to man. But instead of easing the tension, the meeting only made it worse. When Kirk pressed him about the rumors, Mendeecees allegedly smirked and delivered a cutting line. "If you're worried about what I'm saying, maybe you should fix what's broken." His words dripped with arrogance. That comment set the stage for what was coming. Kirk's jaw clenched, his patience snapped, and the thin layer of respect that once existed between the two men crumbled in seconds. The fight hadn't happened yet, but the groundwork was already in place. The only thing left was for one spark to ignite the fire. The night of the explosion wasn't supposed to be chaotic at all. It was meant to be calm, controlled, and productive. Producers had arranged a private, closed-door after-show taping. The idea was simple: give cast members a chance to air out their differences before the official reunion went live. No cameras, no pressure, just an opportunity to clear the air away from the spotlight. On paper, it sounded like a smart strategy. In reality, it became the perfect storm. When you gather egos, grudges, and reality TV veterans in a single room, expecting peace is nothing short of naive. Every person in that space carried baggage. Old rivalries, broken trust, resentments that had never truly been resolved. It was a recipe for disaster, and it didn't take long for the cracks to show. Kirk Frost entered the room already tense. His pride had been wounded by the rumors, and his anger had been simmering for days. Across from him sat Mendeecees Harris, calm on the surface but radiating the kind of arrogance that only fuels fire. The energy in the room shifted the moment their eyes locked. Everyone else could feel it. Silence didn't bring peace, it brought anticipation. Other cast members exchanged nervous glances. They had seen conflicts before, but something about this standoff felt different. This wasn't stage drama for the cameras. This was raw, real, dangerous. Producers hoped the men would talk it out, maybe even shake hands, but the mood made it clear. That wasn't going to happen. The meeting was supposed to diffuse the tension. Instead, it was the match that lit the fuse. What began as an attempt at resolution would spiral into one of the most destructive moments in love and hip-hop history. It started with words, as most explosions do. The closed-door meeting had barely begun when Kirk Frost leaned forward, his voice low but sharp, demanding answers. "You've been running your mouth, Mendeecees. Don't play dumb." His tone was steady at first, but everyone in the room could sense the storm brewing beneath it. Mendeecees smirked, leaning back in his chair as though none of it mattered. "If you're worried about what I said," he replied coolly, "maybe that means it's true." That single sentence set the tone. The air grew heavier. Kirk's face flushed, his fists clenched, and his chair scraped against the floor as he pushed himself upright. Voices from around the table tried to intervene. "Sit down, chill, this isn't the place." But their words bounced off walls of pride and ego. Mendeecees straightened too, now matching Kirk's energy, his smirk gone, his eyes hard. The verbal sparring escalated in seconds. Insults flew back and forth like daggers. Kirk accused Mendeecees of disrespecting his marriage, mocking Rashida and undermining his place in the show. Mendeecees fired back with brutal precision, calling Kirk a fraud, a washed-up storyline clinger who only stayed relevant by creating scandals. The more they spoke, the louder they became, until the room was vibrating with hostility. Producers tried stepping in, urging calm, but the men were past reason. Then came the moment no one could stop. Kirk slammed his hand on the table, sending water bottles tumbling. "You don't talk about my wife!" he snapped, his voice cracking with rage. Mendeecees shot back instantly, rising to his feet. "Then keep her out of the drama you create." And just like that, the line was crossed. Kirk lunged forward first, shoving Mendeecees hard enough to knock his chair back. The sound of impact, wood against floor, bodies colliding, echoed through the room. Gasps filled the air as security rushed forward, but it was too late. Mendeecees swung back, landing a wild shot to Kirk's chest that sent both men crashing against the table. Papers, bottles, and microphones scattered in chaos. What followed was less a fight and more an eruption. Fists flew in every direction. Kirk's rage was unfiltered, each punch thrown with years of resentment behind it. Mendeecees fought back just as fiercely, fueled by pride and defiance. The room transformed into a battlefield. Shouts, curses, the frantic scuffle of security boots trying to regain control. Cast members screamed, some rushing for safety, others frozen in shock. Producers yelled for cameras, even though this was supposed to be private. The instinct to capture every scandalous second was too strong. But the scene spiraled faster than anyone expected. Security guards tried separating the two men, pulling at their arms, but every time they were yanked apart, they broke free again. At one point, Kirk shoved past 3 men holding him back just to throw another punch. Mendeecees retaliated by grabbing Kirk's shirt, ripping the fabric as he dragged him down. The chaos lasted only minutes, but it felt endless. By the time both men were finally restrained, the room looked like a war zone. Chairs overturned. Drinks spilled across the floor. A table cracked in the middle from the weight of bodies slamming into it. Both Kirk and Mendeecees were breathing heavily, sweat dripping down their faces, eyes wild with fury. Neither had won. Both had lost. The silence afterward was chilling. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The only sounds were heavy breathing and the distant shuffle of crew members cleaning up the wreckage. It was clear to everyone present that something irreversible had happened. This wasn't just a fight. It was a scandal that would alter the course of the franchise. For producers, the nightmare had just begun. The incident wasn't simply about two men losing their tempers. It was about liability, image, and the survival of love and hip-hop itself. They knew instantly. This couldn't be spun into casual drama. This was the kind of scandal that demanded consequences. And those consequences would be brutal. The moment the fight ended, the room was drenched in tension. Security had both men restrained, but the damage was already done. The cast sat in stunned silence, some still trembling from the chaos they had just witnessed. A few whispered under their breath, trying to make sense of what happened, while others kept their eyes glued to the floor as if avoiding the reality in front of them. The mood was no longer dramatic entertainment. It was fear, disbelief, and shock. Producers, caught between panic and calculation, scrambled to regain control. Their first instinct was damage control. Phones came out, not to gossip, but to document statements and timelines. Crew members were ordered to keep everything contained, to stop anyone from leaking details before VH1 executives could decide how to spin the situation. The last thing they wanted was social media exploding with half-truths before they crafted an official response. Among the cast, reactions split instantly. Some were horrified, calling the altercation crossing the line and demanding that Kirk and Mendeecees face consequences. "This isn't just TV anymore. This is dangerous," one cast member reportedly said, her voice shaking. Others, however, weren't surprised at all. They insisted it was only a matter of time before tensions boiled over. For them, the fight was inevitable, not shocking. What nobody could ignore was the physical and emotional fallout. Kirk's shirt was torn, his face still twisted in rage, pacing back and forth like a caged animal even while security held him back. Mendeecees, though outwardly calmer, looked equally shaken, his breathing heavy, his jaw tight, his eyes refusing to leave Kirk's direction. Both men were ordered out immediately, escorted by guards to opposite exits like rival boxers leaving a bloodied ring. For the producers, one truth crystallized in that moment. The reunion couldn't continue as planned. What was supposed to be a carefully managed taping had spiraled into a liability nightmare. And while the cameras had captured fragments of the chaos, the network faced an urgent decision. Would they bury the footage, or would they dare to use it? Within hours of the altercation, the incident had climbed straight to the top of the network's agenda. Executives at VH1 were furious, not just because of the fight itself, but because of what it represented. Love and hip-hop had always thrived on drama, but there was a clear line between scripted conflict and uncontrolled violence. What Kirk Frost and Mendeecees Harris unleashed in that closed-door meeting wasn't television. It was a liability, a legal and reputational disaster waiting to explode. Phone calls rang late into the night as producers filed detailed reports and lawyers stepped in to assess potential risks. Could lawsuits come from injured staff or frightened cast members? Would advertisers threaten to pull their funding if the footage ever aired? These were the questions dominating the boardroom. The executives weren't worried about ratings anymore. They were worried about survival. The decision was swift and uncompromising. Both Kirk and Mendeecees were to be blacklisted from all future Love and Hip Hop productions effective immediately. No appearances, no cameos, no chance at redemption arcs. The punishment was total erasure. Their contracts were terminated, and word spread quickly among insiders that they were now considered untouchable within the VH1 family. For the network, this wasn't just about disciplining two stars. It was about setting an example. Love and Hip Hop could not afford to look like it condoned violence, not when public opinion was already divided on whether the show glorified chaos. By cutting ties so abruptly, VH1 hoped to protect its brand, reassure sponsors, and send a warning to every other cast member. Step out of line like this, and you're finished. The backlash was immediate and loud. Some fans praised the network for finally taking a stand, while others accused VH1 of hypocrisy, pointing out that the show had always encouraged explosive drama for ratings. But regardless of opinion, one fact was undeniable. Kirk and Mendeecees had crossed a line that even reality TV couldn't excuse. The moment word of the altercation leaked, the internet lit up like wildfire. Even before official reports surfaced, snippets from eyewitness cast members and vague tweets from crew insiders began to circulate. Hashtags like On Kirk vs. Mendeecees, LHH Fight Night, and Love and Hip Hop Chaos trended within hours, pulling in millions of views. Fans were desperate for details, and speculation filled the gaps. Some claimed Kirk had been the aggressor. Others swore Mendeecees threw the first punch. With no official footage released yet, the fight became a legend shaped entirely by gossip and fan imagination. On Instagram, timelines flooded with memes. Split-screen images of Kirk and Mendeecees facing off like boxers in a pay-per-view fight racked up thousands of likes. TikTok creators reenacted the rumored altercation, adding dramatic sound effects and commentary that only fueled the frenzy. For younger fans especially, the scandal became entertainment in itself, another chaotic chapter in a franchise already built on mayhem. But while some laughed, others were furious. A significant section of the fan base condemned both men, insisting that reality TV should never escalate into physical violence. "This isn't drama anymore. It's dangerous," one viral post read, sparking debate threads that stretched into the hundreds of comments. Viewers worried about the example being set, asking whether the show had finally crossed a moral line by giving volatile personalities a platform. Then came the deeper divides. Team Kirk and Team Mendeecees camps began to form, with fans passionately defending their favorite. Kirk loyalists argued that he had been pushed too far, that Mendeecees disrespected his marriage and left him no choice. Meanwhile, Mendeecees supporters painted Kirk as insecure, hot-headed, and unable to handle criticism. The arguments spilled across platforms, turning into a culture war within the love and hip-hop fandom. Producers and VH1 tried to stay silent, but the lack of an official statement only made fans more relentless. Screenshots of alleged insider DMs were passed around like gospel, with each leak painting a different version of the truth. Every hour, the story grew bigger, darker, and harder to contain. In the end, the fight wasn't just a scandal confined to a backstage room. It became a viral storm that dominated timelines, podcasts, and gossip blogs. Love and hip-hop had always thrived on messy drama, but this time, the audience wasn't just watching the show. They were writing it in real time, shaping the narrative through hashtags, memes, and endless online debates. Inside the Love and Hip-Hop family, the aftermath of the fight hit just as hard as it did online, if not harder. Cast members were forced to pick sides, whether they wanted to or not. For many, it wasn't just about who swung first. It was about loyalty, history, and long-standing relationships. Kirk Frost and Mendeecees Harris weren't just co-stars, they were fixtures in the franchise, men with deep connections that stretched across multiple seasons. Their clash created fractures that rippled through every circle. Some cast members immediately rallied around Kirk. They sympathized with his outrage, insisting that Mendeecees had crossed the line by mocking his marriage and belittling his legacy. "You can say what you want about Kirk," one insider allegedly said, "but disrespecting Rashida? That's a trigger, and everyone knows it." These voices argued that Kirk's reaction, while violent, was born out of deep hurt and years of bottled-up tension. To them, he was a man defending not just his pride, but his family. Others sided with Mendeecees, painting Kirk as the aggressor who couldn't control his temper. They pointed out that Mendeecees had always been blunt and unfiltered, and Kirk should have expected harsh words without letting them escalate into blows. "That's Kirk's problem," one cast member vented. "He takes everything as an attack. Mendeecees was just saying what everyone else thinks." For these supporters, Mendeecees embodied confidence, while Kirk exposed insecurity. The division wasn't clean or simple. Some tried to stay neutral, but even silence was seen as taking a side. Group chats turned hostile. Friendships that had lasted years fractured overnight. Reunion tapings and spin-off projects suddenly felt impossible because no one knew how to exist in the same space without reigniting the feud. What became clear was that the altercation wasn't just a fight between two men. It was a wedge driven into the heart of the cast. Every alliance, every loyalty, every partnership was tested. Love and hip-hop had seen drama before, but never had the family itself felt this divided. And in that divide, the producers faced their next challenge, holding together a franchise that was threatening to tear itself apart from the inside. Once the fight spilled beyond the walls of the closed-door meeting, the media pounced. Gossip blogs, entertainment sites, and tabloid outlets couldn't get enough of the chaos. Headlines screamed across the internet, "Love and hip-hop stars Kirk Frost and Mendeecees. Harris in violent backstage brawl, and VH1 faces crisis after cast fight spirals out of control." The incident wasn't just a storyline anymore. It was news, and every outlet wanted a piece. TMZ was among the first to publish, citing anonymous sources who described the fight as one of the worst altercations in franchise history. They painted vivid pictures of overturned tables, torn clothing, and security struggling to keep control. Other outlets quickly followed suit, each adding their own spin. Some focused on Kirk's history of scandals, framing him as the common denominator in Love and hip-hop's most toxic moments. Others spotlighted Mendeecees, questioning whether his re-entry into the public spotlight after prison had been handled too recklessly. Daytime talk shows also jumped on the story. Hosts debated the morality of reality television, asking whether networks encouraged this kind of behavior for ratings and then punished stars once things went too far. Clips of the fight, leaked in shaky cell phone quality, began circulating on Twitter and TikTok, making it impossible for VH1 to contain the narrative. Every replay only deepened the frenzy. Sponsors noticed too. Whispers began about advertisers reconsidering their placements, worried about being tied to a show that now looked less like entertainment and more like a liability. VH1 faced tough questions about whether the franchise had lost control of its stars, and whether this was the final straw in a long history of unchecked chaos. Behind closed doors, network executives scrambled to reassure investors while still deciding how much, if any, of the fight could ever be aired without backlash. Meanwhile, public reaction mirrored the media's intensity. Fans devoured every update, but the tone shifted from playful memes to serious debate. Comment sections filled with arguments about accountability. Should Kirk and Mendeecees be punished equally? Did the producers exploit tensions for drama without safeguarding their cast? Or was this simply the risk everyone signed up for when joining reality TV? By the end of the week, the scandal had grown far bigger than Love and hip-hop itself. It became a cultural talking point, a case study in how blurred the line between entertainment and real life had become. The fight wasn't just about two men anymore. It was about the image of a franchise, the ethics of reality television, and the price of fame in an industry built on conflict. In the days that followed, the dust began to settle, but the scars of the fight remained. Kirk Frost and Mendeecees Harris were gone, erased from the franchise they had helped shape. The cast was still fractured, the network still scrambling, and fans still divided. Yet the bigger questions lingered in the air, heavier than ever. Was this truly just a clash of egos pushed too far? Or did it expose something deeper and darker about the way Love and hip-hop operates behind the scenes? For some, the fight symbolized the inevitable collapse of a show that had long thrived on tension without ever addressing its consequences. For others, it was simply human nature boiling over, proof that no amount of cameras or contracts could suppress raw emotion. And then, there were those who wondered whether producers bore some responsibility. Did they push these men into confrontation, knowing the risks, just to create a spectacle? The debate refuses to die because the truth is bigger than the brawl itself. It's about family, loyalty, ego, respect, and what happens when entertainment collides with reality in its rawest form. So now the question shifts to you, the viewer. Whose side are you on? Was Kirk justified in defending his name and his marriage? Or was Mendeecees right to call out a man clinging to relevance? Should they have sought counseling, space, or simply walked away?